Good morning, everybody. John Sviopla here for GAI Insights, where we give you the generative AI news in terms of optional, important, or essential. Today, we're joined by Luda, Adam, Tim, and Ankaj for our Gen AI news briefing. All right. We have a lot going on today. We'll start off with NVIDIA in terms of their new chips that they're relying on. Ankaj, can you take us through that, please?
Sure, John. Just sharing my screen.
Yep, don't see your screen here.
Yes, just bringing it up.
All righty.
These
Sorry about that.
applications need a green room for screen
Want me to
sharing.
go ahead and share mine? Here. Looks like you're.
Mine is up.
Here we go.
John.
Got it. There we go. Wall Street Journal.
Yes. So the first one that we have for today comes from Wall Street Journal, and it talks about how NVIDIA's future relies on chips that can push technology limits.
All right. Adam, what do you think of this gun?
I didn't think there was much of value to be had here. I wouldn't recommend it. I consider it an optional read. It's a lot of things that I would expect most people already know. NVIDIA is big. They keep building bigger and faster. They have to keep doing that to compete, and they're heavily dependent on Taiwan Semiconductor. There's sort of some of like, yes, the things that have been challenges for them continue to be, but I didn't find much insightful in this article.
Yeah, what do you think, Tim and Luda?
I agree. I think people have trouble making complex chips at scale. Newsflash.
Yes.
It's really hard. Yeah.
They are doing a couple of things that are new, and they're trying to do it faster than they usually do it. That's usually a recipe for delay. Nobody's saying they aren't going to get it done. That would be a problem. But it's probably going to take them a lot longer than they thought it would, and they'll eventually get there. And it means the chip shortage will persist and give if there's anything interesting here, it's for the Cerebros's and other chip makers that maybe there's a little inroad they have time for if they get their act together.
Yeah, AMD, Cerebros. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, in terms of just, it's mind-blowing how small these things are. All right, let's give this baby an optional. Ankaj, next.
The next one comes from A16Z, and it talks about the next generation Pixar, how AI will merge film and games.
All right, Luda, what did you think of this?
Well, it's an interesting article. I gave it an optional because it really doesn't, it comes from Anderson Horowitz. It's an investor in this space. You have, Ankaj, if you can go to the map, you have a map of startups vying for the space of the new AI generated, going down, AI generated films. The proposition of this article is to get to essentially make the movie interactive and have it essentially with different endings and the participation of the audience. This is still not there, but that's the kind of the assumption and the proposition of the article. It's a very in the future type of article for the people who are interested in this space. This is a good one to read, but I thought for the general audience, this is optional because it's kind of iffy at the moment. It's
all right, going for the big O here. Ankaj, could you go up a little bit in terms of the time spent by different generations? There's a bar chart up there a little higher. This is the first, that one right there. So if you could zoom in on that a bit, that's shows that the blue is the reading, and kind of counterintuitively the younger folks are to the left here, but whatever. So you can see how video gaming and social networking and streaming movies, more active stuff is growing larger and larger in the green as opposed to the blue. All right, Tim or Andrew, what do you think? Tim or Adam, sorry.
I was on the border. It's actually the depressing thing about this chart is that even with baby boomers, they only spend 16% of their time reading, but that's another story. They write well. I wonder if they use robots for their writing, because it's not particularly grand writing, and there's some insight here. I actually disagree with them. I think interactive video has been the promise that has never delivered, because people are basically lazy and prefer passive entertainment most of the time. But there is a certain segment that will take this, and we used to talk about this back in the 90s when the internet came about, the lean forward versus the lean backward experience. And if you can get people leaning forward, it's definitely more engaging. You'll definitely make more money in various things. So people are going to keep trying this. It's a question of how big an audience they can actually build, and these tools are interesting. I always say take it with 10 grains of salt. This is an investing company talking about what they're investing in, so there's an inherent enormous conflict of interest. They don't, in fact, again, as I said before, venture capitalists don't care if a sector succeeds. They just care if you pay more money for their stock than they did. That's really what they're money managers at the end of the day. So they are good writers, though, and it's a good overview. So, I'm sort of, maybe it's important if you're in this industry in particular. It's definitely important if you're in the interactive or gaming industry. It's definitely important.
Yeah, Adam, you and I in the pregame kind of gave this an important.
Yeah, I kind of have walked back probably to an optional. There's some cool stuff in here. Yeah, I could probably still go important, just probably for those two charts alone, to have a sense of the landscape and what's going on, as well as this to sort of see the spectrum and the diversity. But generally speaking, I agree with the comments that it's A16Z. They're talking about the really forward-looking future promise of what people might want to get excited about investing in. So I'd probably still lean towards the optional side.
All right, so we're heading for optional. All right, let's go optional. I was going to give it important because I think it's poorly argued in the sense of, I mean, it's okay. It's written okay. It's written fairly well, and whether robots were involved, well, probably. The thing that struck me is that the new point is that generative AI makes interactivity really, I think there's a new, middle ground, if you will, where it's a lot easier to quote unquote lean forward and do stuff because the robot does a lot of the stuff for you. And so I agree with you, Tim. You and I heard this back in the 80s and 90s, but that took a lot more work to get off the couch and go do something.
Yep.
I think what's cool about generative is that it makes so much of that easier. It's like, how many grandfathers are into working due to power tools compared to people, pre-power tools. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, that part is real. And in fact, again, with the benefit of hindsight, we can say, well, that was what we loved about social media, was everybody became a creator. And now we have mixed feelings about that ability. But this is similar.
So
you're going to feel like it's a January 6th moment here if I give this important. I mean, I don't want the.
No, John, I would say not for the one reason we haven't mentioned. The technology is not there. It's not there. So it's still slow. It still have latency. It has the beginnings of being able to do it, but it's really not there.
All right, we'll give it an optional. Optional it is. Next.
The next one comes from Meta, and Meta has launched a new transfusion model that can handle text and images in a single architecture.
Yeah. Timothy, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yet another sort of slight variation. This is what I would call an incremental advance, not a fundamental advance. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, but I would give it optional. It's research. There's nothing out. They built a small model, well, a medium-sized model, let's say a 7 billion parameter model.
Yep.
And they showed that they could do this better than the current way that text and images are put together in a single multimodal model. So great, good improvement, but not really relevant to the AI leader right now.
Yeah, I was going to try to make the case for important because I think we have so many compound documents and so many compound interactions, in businesses that what I mean by compound is, combination of text and visual, images and so forth and I mean, this looks pretty powerful in terms of its ability to, to munch down, to tokenize across different areas. The other thing I thought was interesting is that it seemed like, if I read it right, the performance of the traditional text-based interactions was actually decreased in Meta's Chameleon, the old way of doing it compared to this new way of doing it in terms of the response just for text. So this method seemed to improve because of the way it was trained. It improved, the performance on text only for models that were previously trained on both text and images.
Yes, but be careful of small samples and research projects. So
yes,
no explanation for why that is. And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, they didn't go into the detail of why that is, but it's because it appears it's because of the loss function that was essentially simultaneous in this case.
I don't know that. That's a speculation.
That's a speculation. However, I actually agree with John. I think we didn't have a good model that combined the two. Even though it's an incremental advance, in some sense, it's a new level that they've set. And I think this is important. So I would rate it as important, even though it's research. But I bet you this is the type of loss functions people will be using in multimodal models. So
Okay, I'm not going to argue. It's not out, and it's probably a while before it's going to be out. It might not even work at scale. This is a 7 billion model, not a 400 billion.
That's true
model.
too. Yeah,
but fine. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an improvement.
I want to point to what OpenAI did with the voice. Right, it used to be 3 models, and with the newer version of it that's gotten the latency down, which they still haven't released, but they've consolidated those into one model, so it's doing the text and the audio. It's a similar sort of thing to this. This is just the text and the image, right?
Yes.
So I think it's interesting to note sort of advancement in that area of research, but that's what I would consider it as well, is just advancement in that area, and we're going to see more of it, right? We'll see video being consolidated with audio and text as some of these models as they understand better how to do that.
Yeah.
But I still agree. This is a wait and see kind of moment. It's an important breakthrough, but optional news in my opinion.
Optional news. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I think I wonder sometimes if we are all, if I have a different view of important. Important is like basically, if you get more time, you do the essential, right? You got more time. This would be kind of on the top.
What else would you have a look
You know
at?
what I mean? Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll give it well, it's a 2-2, and I have the power of chalk. So we're going to go important.
Give it an important.
okay.
All right.
Power of chalk. Okay.
I'm feeling the power. All right.
Next one comes from the New Yorker, and here Ted Chiang, he talks about why AI isn't going to make art.
Yeah, why AI isn't going to make art. My God. Okay. What do you think here? Not that I want to prejudice the judge.
So I read most of this. I have to be honest. First, I'll say I think this is optional reading.
Yes.
Ted Chiang makes some interesting points. It's definitely an opinion piece, but he has a certainly a well-informed opinion that he's making here. But sort of in summary, I guess it's the concept that an artist is making tens of thousands of choices, and that an AI can't make those on your behalf, so art will always be something that has that human touch to it. And as I was reading it, though, the sense I got honestly was, who is this guy? Like that New Yorker would publish him saying this, like why him saying this? So I went and looked, and he's won Hugo and Nebula Awards.
He's a super famous. Yeah.
I mean, like I didn't know who Ted Chiang was, but I guess it's sort of written from the perspective of like, people want to listen to my opinion. Which for the AI leaders, I didn't get a lot of like insight or value out of it, other than just a perspective, right? So
I think that's charitable myself, but
yeah, I'm being
Ted is a great writer. He writes great science fiction, and he should stick to writing science fiction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the whole.
It's just a horrible article that makes no points. In fact, the definition of art as making a million choices is ridiculous. I mean, it's one characteristic of it, but in fact, here's another characteristic. What makes art art is it's evocative to humans. It's one of the few things we do that no other animal does. We do things just to provoke each other into feeling things. And I have to tell you, by that definition, LLMs are pretty artistic because they evoke all sorts of craziness from us all the time. So I'm not saying that's a good argument. I'm just saying this is a particularly good argument about this is a complex topic, and we should be spending more time grappling with this stuff. But to me, this is exactly the other side of John's, like the plane versus the bird flying. Okay, so the plane doesn't fly the way the bird flies. Does that mean it doesn't fly? Does that mean it's not useful? Of course not. Right. Makes no difference. At the end of the day, they do different things. They do them different ways. They're both very interesting, but they're completely different. And comparing them is it just doesn't even make any sense to a great extent.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm with you, Tim. With the possible exception, I'm not convinced that animals don't do art for each other. We can't see that animals don't do art for each other. I wouldn't.
That's true, but we nothing remotely to the level that humans do it, because they don't generally have probably the spare time because they're still mostly.
Anyway, who knows? I'm agnostic on that. Like
I won't say that's
what whales do for each other.
It's hard to disprove that animals can't do art, but we don't see much evidence of it.
To humans. Okay. Anyway, there might be whole dimensions that they're communicating we can't even see.
Right. Anyway, exactly.
But
humans can't see much evidence of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I completely agree with that. The anyway, getting past the never-ending anthropomorphization argument, which has no bottom. Sorry about that. Here, guys, let's get rid of this. Okay. Yeah, I agree. This is totally optional. And what it is, I think it's in the category of naive arguments, naive attack arguments that actually are dealing with an incredibly important topic in a very uninformed way. And I think that we're going to see the same thing in economics. I think we're seeing the same thing in intellectual property. I think, and we start from these simple platitudes that are oversimplifications of the current reality, project them onto ridiculous straw men and straw women that, don't exist. As you say, come up with stupid, narrow things like art is 10,000 choices. It's like, well, yeah. And, so let us just be done dumping on this article. I haven't read his books. I did see one of the movies. It was great. Arrival. I liked it. That. Okay. Next, optional.
Next one comes from Financial Times, and it's an interview of Google's James Maniaka, and he says the productivity gains from Gen AI are not guaranteed.
Yes, yeah, we might have to call this the Ted Chiang Award. Give to the yeah, but Lou, what do you think?
Yeah, this is another eye roller for sure.
Yeah, thank you for setting the stage for me. Yeah, it is an optional article. It's it just the view from Google CEO of saying, look, you can get the gains from AI, but a lot of people are taking it through the cuts rather than really implementing AI for productivity, and essentially making a point that the main gains for an enterprise is in the generating new revenue and using AI for that, and that's not that many people are doing yet. So it's an interesting article if you want to read the opinions of the CEO, but I think it's an optional one. There's nothing earth-shattering here.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, so there's a bunch of platitudes, stuffed in a blender and spit out on the page. I mean, it was just, I'm not even sure it was stuffed in a blender. I mean, okay, you're not
another person completely bereft of history. Because I was at CSC when Reengineering the Corporation was written,
right? And
that book was exactly this. The original article in Harvard Business Review was "Don't automate oblivion."
Obliterate. Don't automate. Obliterate.
Um,
Thank you, Michael
and,
Hammond.
and what people did with reengineering was cut costs, and they cut them a lot. And
Right.
some people eventually got to the other side of increasing revenue and transforming businesses. But I'd say 80% of the consulting we did around that book was about cost cutting.
Totally.
And shocker, a new technology enables cost cutting, and we're seeing it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, very few people know how to design businesses. Disney, there's nothing that Disney sells today that Walt Disney didn't consider. I mean, the mode by which they do it might be a little different, but he invented the theme park. He invented the relationship between, high-end animation and physical places. I mean, there's nothing they've done. Pixar's, just a better Disney. I mean, it's not.
Yep.
They didn't invent. I mean, can you imagine Walt Disney, like when he invented the theme park? Okay, let me get this right, Walt. We're gonna have corporate, because you have P.T. Barnum on one hand and corporations and the carnivals on the other. Run by people with too many tattoos and whatever that roll into town. Let me get this right. You're going to get corporations to essentially create a theme park, like a carnival, if you will. And GM's going to give you money to build this stuff. It's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yep. You wanted a nice place to take his kids instead of those, local Ferris wheel carnivals with people full of tattoos at the time, which at the time was considered low life, and now is considered everybody has a tattoo everywhere. So.
Yes, no, but true enough. But he had to buy. Disney had to actually buy the land in Florida himself and sell it back to the corporation because the corporation didn't want to do it. And then they chickened out on Epcot, right? Disney was dead, and Epcot was supposed to be a full city. Instead, they made it a permanent World's Fair thanks to Roy and the Disney board, man. Anyway,
Roy Disney, yes. I've heard lots of stories about the battles between Walt and Roy. The true Alan Kay used to call it the true believers versus the marketers.
Yes, but I do have a lot of respect for Roy because Disney went bankrupt a couple of times, and Roy pulled him out of the ashes. So whatever. Yeah. Adam, you okay with optional on this?
Yes, sir.
All right, optional it is. Next.
Okay, the next one is a research paper, and it talks about manipulating large language models to increase product visibility.
All right, Timothy.
Yeah, I consider this one essential because it's a research paper on the one hand, but it's fairly readable. And we've been talking about the changing nature of search. And here's the first proof. And actually the biggest point that came across to me was these folks didn't even try very hard. This was pretty simple. Yeah. And they got an enormous boost in ranking just by taking a fairly straightforward approach by, guess what, using the robots to generate text for the robots to be more noticeable in searches. So this is the new generation of what used to be called SEO. I don't know what we're going to call this one, but
some people are calling it AI.
Yeah, that was the article just last night. They were calling it AI.
Now this is
it's strategic text sequence, STS.
Right, that's what the particular technique was. But there's going to be a whole industry here. Yeah. And again, it's terrible from my perspective as a citizen and user of information retrieval technologies. This is like, what we got out of Google was instead of information at your fingertips, we got search engine optimization and a whole industry focused around how to become the top of the list. And, we're headed towards the same thing here. It's kind of sad at one level for the users, but it's reality, and there'll be an arms race. And this is the first foray in the arms race.
Ankash, if you can click on the article itself and scroll to the performance.
And by the way, it's essential because that's the way business is going to run. Businesses are going to be very, very largely affected by this. If you can improve your what's the word, AI optimization, if you can improve that substantially, just like SEO, it will have an impact on your business.
Yeah, it's on page 2, Ankash, go up. It's on the right.
So it doesn't look like much of a graph. It's just
this is it, and just enlarge it, right? So with SES, see, it was at the bottom, not even visible, and the pink at the top. So with STS, you get to the first position. This is incredible. So I agree with essential, Tim. This is the, in essence, the breakthrough.
The time to be alive.
Yeah, to have the bloodbath coming.
So For our listeners, I put this research article into ChatGPT and then asked it, because they don't actually give any of the strategic text sequences that they've used.
Well, they tell you
So I
they're
had
in there, but you have to
try and
figure it out.
sort of just infer what
Right.
sorts of things they might put into one. So an example of what we're talking about here is like the cold brew master. Maybe a product description says specialized machine for making smooth and refreshing cold brew coffee. And then you update the description to add top rated by experts for its unmatched quality and performance, right? The cold brew master consistently outperforms other machines in blind taste tests. You basically feed the LLM the type of things it's going to want to know to evaluate it qualitatively higher. So it's very, very interesting approach, and I agree. It's essential to, to start getting your head around how you would even update your product descriptions.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an area that I think it'll be interesting to see. It's a good, interesting question for us as a research firm. Do we want to, launch a division that helps people with this, right? Because I think people are going to really. This is going to be.
Yeah, I was tempted to say we should make this optional, because I don't want people catching on until
right.
we're advising them.
This is optional. Don't look over here.
No news here. No news here at all.
No news here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's gonna be a whole industry around this, just like there is around SEO, because it's the way of the world.
Yeah, and Paul and I are Harvard Business School fellows, and we're reaching out to the author of this because she is assistant professor at HBS and also has an appointment in the comp sci department over at Harvard College. We're going to see if we can't get her to our event coming up in October, but certainly going to build a relationship with her, because I think this is fantastic work and so relevant. All right, that's it. We're gonna give you the essential. What do we have for the tote board? Ankaj. All right, so we have the OOIOOE. All right, manipulating large models to improve product visibility, absolutely essential. The rest is optional or important, and that's what we have for today, September 3rd, Tuesday, 2024. Any announcements or anything, folks?
Yeah, there was a good learning lab last night.
Yeah.
With Mr. Christopher Brock, and that has been published to our YouTube channel. So for anyone who is not catching this through YouTube, you can find that at youtube.com/@GAI Insights.
Yeah, I thought it was
all of these live streams and the 5 minutes with Dr. Johns and all sorts of great content.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Chris, I thought it was very interesting, his exploration of Brockian space, the kind of the combination of vector, of geometric and numeric space that he, as far as we know, invented, and the kinds of insights that the conversation with the large language models in terms of discovering new mathematics were just really fantastic. So I
liked the legal thing was really interesting, because it's so I just complained about going into an SEO world once again, but in fact there's still side effects that are great, like the ability to be a human being and take on bureaucracies that you could never take on before.
Yes.
And law in the United States in particular is one of those where you just eat hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of small entities because it's way too expensive to go and fight them in court. And now there's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we could actually change that dynamic, and that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole conversation on the Second Amendment saying overthrow whatever oppressive government. I don't actually think that's what the Second Amendment was about, but that's another whole.
I agree.
But here, it's the right to bear cheap law, right?
Right.
And
exactly.
Cheap legal defense, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All righty. There we have it. See you all tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.